The cash drawer stuck again, and Dana Frost had to slam it twice before the ancient register would close. She wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her wrist, leaving a streak of dust she didn't have the energy to care about. The Night's Rest Motel sat on the edge of nowhere, a crumbling relic on a highway that most GPS systems had forgotten existed. At 23, Dana had imagined her life would look different than this, managing a falling-apart motel for minimum wage, while her college degree gathered in a drawer. But her mother's medical bills had crushed those dreams 6 months ago, and now she worked double shifts just to keep the lights on in their tiny apartment across town. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering in a rhythm that matched her headache. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday, and she'd been here since 6 in the morning. Her replacement had called in sick again, which meant Dana would be pulling an all-nighter. The coffee pot in the back office had died around hour 12, leaving her with nothing but exhaustion and the dull ache in her feet from standing too long. Rain hammered against the windows, turning the parking lot into a dark mirror that reflected the motel's neon sign. Only 3 rooms were occupied tonight, which was actually better than average. Dana had just started reconciling the day's meager receipts when the door crashed open with such force that the bells attached to it flew off and skittered across the floor. A man stumbled inside, and Dana's first instinct was to reach for the panic button under the desk. He was massive, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that filled the doorway. His clothes were expensive, she could tell that much even in their ruined state, a black coat that hung torn and bloody from his frame. Rain and something darker dripped onto her already stained carpet, but it was his face that made her freeze, finger hovering over the alarm. Even pale and drawn with obvious pain, he was the most striking person she'd ever seen. His hair was pure white, not gray but genuinely white like fresh snow, and it fell past his shoulders in a tangled wet mass. His skin held that same colorless quality, as though he'd never seen the sun, and his features were sharp and aristocratic, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips pressed thin against whatever agony he was feeling. His eyes found hers, and Dana forgot to breathe. They were the color of dark wine, almost black in the dim light, and ancient. That was the only word for it. Despite appearing to be in his early 30s, those eyes held centuries. "I need a room." His voice was cultured, accented in a way she couldn't place. British, maybe, but older than that. Each word was precise, controlled, even as he swayed on his feet. "Please." That last word sounded like it cost him something. Like he wasn't used to asking for anything. Dana's practical side warred with her compassion. He was clearly hurt, clearly in trouble, and the blood god, there was so much blood, suggested he needed a hospital, not a cheap motel room. But there was also something in his eyes, a desperate pride that told her he'd leave if she suggested calling 911. And despite every reasonable instinct screaming at her to be careful, to protect herself, she found herself checking the computer. Her fingers moved automatically, pulling up the availability screen. "I have 1 room left," she said, proud that her voice only shook a little. "Room 12 at the end. It's $45 a night, and I need a credit card for incidentals." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his pale face. He reached into his coat with movements that were clearly painful and withdrew a wallet. The leather was fine, probably Italian, and the credit card he placed on the counter was black, the kind reserved for people who spent more in a month than Dana made in a year. She processed it quickly, watching him from the corner of her eye. He kept one hand pressed to his side, and fresh blood seeped between his fingers. Whatever had happened to him, it was bad, really bad. "Sir, you're hurt," she said quietly, sliding the key card across the counter. "I should call someone. An ambulance, no." The word was sharp, commanding, and she instinctively stepped back. Then his expression softened, became almost apologetic. "Forgive me. But no hospitals, no authorities. I simply need rest, and I will recover." "That's a lot of blood to recover from," Dana said, but she didn't push. She'd learned in her years of poverty that sometimes people had reasons for avoiding official channels. Good reasons or bad, it wasn't always her place to judge. He took the key card with his free hand, his fingers brushing hers for just a moment. His skin was ice cold, and that brief contact sent electricity up her arm. Their eyes met again, and she saw surprise in his face, like he'd felt it too. "Thank you," he said, and the sincerity in those 2 words was more intense than any gratitude she'd ever received. "You may have saved my life tonight, Miss Dana Frost." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "And you are? You may call me Dreven." He inclined his head in something that was almost a bow, an oddly old-fashioned gesture that suited him. "Dreven Nachmarin, and I am deeply in your debt." He turned toward the door, moving with careful precision that couldn't hide his pain. Dana watched him take 3 steps before her conscience won out over her common sense. "Wait," she called, already regretting the word even as it left her mouth. He paused, looking back at her with those impossible eyes. I have a first aid kit in the back. It's pretty comprehensive. My mom was a nurse before she got sick. Let me at least help you clean those wounds before you bleed out in room 12. I just changed those sheets yesterday. The last part came out more flippant than she'd intended, but exhaustion was making her punchy. To her surprise, Dreven's lips curved into what might have been a smile. Your kindness honors you, he said. I accept. Dana grabbed the battered red first aid kit from the office and came around the desk. Up close, Dreven was even more imposing. She barely reached his shoulder, and the breadth of him made her feel small. But there was something in his face, a carefully controlled vulnerability that made her less afraid. Room 12 is at the end, she said. I'll help you there. Then take a look at the damage. She shouldn't leave the desk unattended. She shouldn't go to an isolated room with a strange man, especially one who looked like he'd been in a serious fight. Every safety lesson she'd ever learned was screaming at her to stay in the lobby where the security cameras could see her. But Dana had always had a soft heart, even when it got her in trouble. And something about Driven made her want to help him, made her feel like, despite everything logical, she was safe with him. The walk to room 12 felt longer than usual. Driven moved slowly, his breathing careful and controlled. She unlocked the door and flicked on the lights, revealing the standard motel room queen bed with a faded floral comforter, cheap landscape painting, television bolted to the dresser. It wasn't much, but it was clean. Driven made it to the bed before his legs gave out. He sat down heavily, one hand still pressed to his side. In the better light, Dana could see the full extent of the damage. His shirt was shredded, revealing pale skin beneath that was marked with deep gashes. Some of them looked like claw marks. What happened to you? She asked, kneeling beside him with the first aid kit. Did an animal attack you? Something like that. His voice was tight with pain. I was ambushed on the road. My attackers fled when they realized they couldn't finish what they started, but they damaged my vehicle and I was forced to walk. Your establishment was the first sanctuary I found. Dana carefully pulled his coat off, trying not to cause more pain. The shirt beneath was expensive silk, now ruined beyond repair. She hesitated, her hands hovering near the buttons. I need to see the wounds to treat them, she said. Is it okay if I? Please. He leaned back slightly, giving her access. Do what you must. Her fingers were steadier than she expected as she unbuttoned his shirt. The fabric clung to the wounds, stuck there with dried blood, and she had to fetch water from the bathroom to soak it free. Each time she thought she'd revealed the worst of it, there was more damage underneath. Jesus, she whispered, staring at the 5 parallel gashes across his ribs. They were deep, deep enough that she could see things she didn't want to identify. You need a hospital. These need stitches at minimum, probably surgery. I can't. You can, Driven said. His hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his chest, and that cold touch steadied her somehow. Clean them, bandage them. That's all I need. My body will do the rest. That's not how bodies work, Dana protested, but she was already opening packages of gauze and antiseptic. You're going to get infected. You could die. I won't. There was absolute certainty in his voice. Trust me, Dana Frost. I am harder to kill than I appear. She wanted to argue, but something in his eyes stopped her. Instead, she focused on the task at hand, cleaning the wounds as gently as she could. He didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, though the antiseptic had to burn like hell. His muscles were tense under her fingers, but he held perfectly still, letting her work. What did you say attacked you? She asked, trying to distract both of them. Because these look like claw marks, but they're huge. A bear, maybe? Not quite. Driven watched her face as she worked, his expression unreadable. Tell me, Dana, do you believe in things that go bump in the night? Like what? Ghosts? Monsters? She secured a bandage over the worst of the gashes on his ribs. I believe in drunk drivers and bad luck and cancer. That doesn't care how good a person you are. The real world is scary enough without making up extra nightmares. Wise words. He was quiet for a moment while she cleaned the cuts on his shoulder. And what if I told you that the real world contains nightmares you've never imagined? Ancient things that walk among humans, hidden in plain sight. Dana sat back on her heels, studying him. I'd say you've lost a lot of blood and might be a little delirious. Hold still, this one's still bleeding. She pressed gauze to a particularly nasty gash on his chest, applying pressure to stop the flow. Driven's hand came up to cover hers again, helping her maintain the pressure. This close, she could see details she'd missed before: the way his pupils were slightly too large, the unnatural symmetry of his features, the complete absence of any blemish or imperfection in his skin. You're not afraid of me, he observed. Why? Dana considered the question. I don't know, she admitted. I probably should be. Strange man, middle of the night, covered in blood. But I look at you and I don't feel afraid. I feel like you're the one who's scared. Something shifted in his expression, surprise and respect mixing together. You see clearly. Yes, I am afraid. For the first time in a very long while, I fear I may have made a mistake that will cost me everything. What kind of mistake? She secured the gauze with medical tape, then moved to examine his arms. More cuts there, defensive wounds like he'd tried to shield himself. I trusted the wrong person. Made an alliance with someone who claimed to seek peace but wanted only power. His voice was bitter. The price of my idealism may be war. Sounds like politics, Dana said. I don't know much about that world, but I know betrayal is pretty universal. Clean the wounds, figure out who your real allies are, and don't make the same mistake twice. Draven laughed, a short, sharp sound. If only it were that simple, but you're not wrong. The principles are the same whether one rules a corporation or a kingdom. A kingdom? Dana raised an eyebrow. That's a fancy metaphor, is it? He watched her with those ancient eyes, and for a moment she had the unsettling feeling that he was deciding something important. Dana Frost, you have shown me kindness when you had no reason to do so. You've tended my wounds and asked nothing in return. Such behavior is rare in my experience. It deserves honesty. Okay, she said slowly, wrapping a bandage around his forearm. I'm listening. What I'm about to tell you will sound insane. You'll think the blood loss has affected my mind, but I swear to you, every word is true. He waited until she met his eyes. I am not human. I am vampire, one of the old blood, the true immortals. And I am the king of the Eastern Court, one of the 5 great vampire kingdoms that have existed since before your recorded history began. Dana stared at him. Then she looked at the first aid kit, wondering if maybe she was the one who was delirious. 30 hours without sleep could do strange things to a person's mind. Vampire, she repeated flatly. As in drinks blood lives forever turns into a bat? The first 2, yes. The third is a myth, though some of us can take mist form. The bat thing was started by a novelist with an overactive imagination. He said it so seriously, so matter-of-factly, that she almost believed him. Almost. And I'm the Queen of England. Dana finished bandaging his arm and sat back. Look, you've been through trauma. It's normal to be a little confused. Once you get some rest, Draves moved faster than her eyes could follow. One moment he was sitting on the bed, the next he was across the room by the door. Then he was back in front of her, having crossed the space in literally the blink of an eye. Holy shit, Dana breathed, her heart suddenly pounding. How did you? I am vampire, Draven repeated gently. I can move faster than human sight can track. I am far stronger than any mortal. I do not age, do not sicken, do not die except under specific circumstances. And I have walked this earth for over 800 years. Dana's mind raced, trying to process. Everything she knew about reality was telling her this was impossible, but she'd just seen him move. That wasn't a trick. That wasn't explainable by normal means. Prove it, she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice was. Show me something else. Something that can't be a trick. Drake smiled, and this time she saw them fangs, long and sharp and very real, extending from his upper jaw. Not gross or monstrous like in the movies, but elegant and deadly. A predator's teeth. I feed on blood, he said, his voice slightly distorted by the fangs. Human blood, though I can survive on animal blood for a time. I'm burned by sunlight, weakened by silver, and can be killed by a wooden stake through the heart or by decapitation. I cannot enter a private home without invitation, and I cast no reflection in mirrors. Every myth has a grain of truth at its core. Dana's hand went to her throat instinctively, a protective gesture. Draven noticed, and something like pain crossed his face. He took a step back, giving her space, and the fangs retracted until they were hidden again. I will not hurt you, he said quietly. You have my word as king and as a man of honor. You saved my life tonight, Dana Frost. Such a debt is not repaid with violence. I would sooner face the sun than bring you harm. She believed him. That was the crazy part, she actually believed him. Maybe it was the exhaustion talking, or maybe it was the sincerity in those ancient eyes. But Dana found herself relaxing slightly. So what attacked you, she asked. Other vampires? Yes. Vampires from the Northern Court sent by a rival who wishes to claim my territory. Draven moved back to the bed, sitting down carefully. I am one of 5 vampire kings who rule different territories across the world. The Eastern Court encompasses much of what you would call Eastern Europe and Asia. We've maintained peace for nearly 3 centuries, but recent events have destabilized that balance. What events? Dana was surprised to find herself genuinely curious. If this was real, and increasingly she thought it might be, then she'd stumbled into something much bigger than a random mugging. A new king took control of the Northern Court 5 years ago. Casimir Hailstone. He's young by our standards, only 200 years old, and ambitious beyond reason. He believes the old ways are antiquated, that we should reveal ourselves to humanity and rule openly rather than from the shadows. Draven's expression darkened. I disagreed. Such a revelation would lead to war, human and vampire alike dying by the thousands. So Casimir decided to remove me and any other king who stood in his way. Hence the ambush. Dana gestured to his bandaged torso. But if you're so powerful, how did they hurt you? Even kings can be overwhelmed by numbers. They attacked with 20 warriors while I traveled with only my 2 personal guards. We fought them off, but Mikhail and Elena sacrificed themselves to let me escape. His voice broke slightly on the names. They were my friends for over a century and now they're gone. Dana's heart clenched at the grief in his words. Vampire or not, loss was clearly just as painful for him. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. His fingers were cold against hers, but they tightened around her palm, accepting the comfort. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "That's awful." They sat in silence for a moment, her small warm hand in his large cold one. Dana's mind was still reeling, trying to adjust her entire worldview to accommodate vampires and ancient kingdoms and immortal kings. But somehow, sitting here with Driven, it didn't feel scary. It felt right, like some part of her had been waiting her whole life for magic to be real. "You should rest," she said finally. "You need to heal, and I need to get back to the desk before someone tries to check in and thinks I've abandoned my post." "Will you come back?" Driven asked, and there was something almost vulnerable in the question. "I would speak with you more if you're willing. It's been a long time since I met someone who looked at me and saw a person rather than a monster or a legend." "I'm here until 7 tomorrow morning," Dana said. "If I can step away from the desk, I'll check on you. Make sure you haven't bled through all my careful bandaging." "Thank you." He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture straight out of a historical drama. "Your kindness will not be forgotten." Dana felt her cheeks heat as she stood and gathered the used medical supplies. "Rest, and try not to die in room 12. The reviews would be terrible." She left before she could see his reaction to her weak joke, closing the door behind her and leaning against it for a moment. Her heart was racing, adrenaline and something else pumping through her system. Vampires were real. Driven was a king. And she'd just spent the last hour tending to his wounds like it was the most normal thing in the world. The lobby was exactly as she'd left it, which meant no one had tried to rob the place while she was gone. Dana cleaned up the blood Driven had tracked in, then returned to her post behind the desk. The rain had eased to a drizzle, and the parking lot was quiet. She should call someone. The police, maybe, or at least her manager. There was a hurt man in room 12 who'd admitted to being in a gang fight or whatever vampires called it. But something stopped her. Driven had asked for sanctuary, had trusted her with the truth. Calling the authorities felt like a betrayal. Besides, who would believe her? "Yes, officer, we have a vampire king bleeding in room 12. "No, I'm not on drugs." Dana laughed quietly to herself and pulled out her phone instead. She opened a browser and typed in Vampire Eastern Court King. Nothing but folklore and fiction. Casimir Hailstone Vampire brought up a historical figure from the 1800s, but nothing recent. Either vampires were very good at staying hidden, or she was having the most elaborate hallucination of her life. The night passed slowly. She dozed a few times, her head pillowed on her arms at the desk, but mostly she stayed awake thinking about everything Driven had told her. Around 3 in the morning, she made herself a cup of terrible vending machine coffee and checked the security cameras. Everything was quiet except room 12. The camera showed Driven's door, and as she watched, a shadow passed in front of it, then another. They moved too smoothly to be human, too purposefully to be tricks of the light. Dana's blood ran cold. Someone was watching his room. She grabbed the baseball bat they kept under the desk. It had never actually been used. But right now she was grateful for it and headed outside. The rain had stopped completely, leaving everything wet and glistening under the parking lot lights. 2 figures stood near room 12. They were tall and pale like Driven, with that same unnatural perfection to their features. One was male with white hair pulled back in a braid, the other female with hair that fell in a straight curtain down her back. Both wore dark clothing that seemed to absorb the light. "Can I help you?" Dana called, proud that her voice didn't shake. The baseball bat felt very small in her hands. The 2 vampires turned to look at her with identical expressions of surprise. The female tilted her head, studying Dana with eyes that glowed faintly red in the darkness. "A human," she said, her accent thick and Eastern European. "How quaint. Tell me, little mortal, is there a wounded vampire in that room?" "Don't know what you're talking about," Dana lied. "It's occupied by a guest, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property. No loitering." The male vampire laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "She's brave, Natasha. I almost admire it. But we can smell him, the blood and the fear. Driven is in that room, and we've come to finish what we started." He moved toward the door, and Dana didn't think. She just reacted, stepping between him and room 12 with the bat raised. "You're not going in there," she said. "This is private property. And he's a paying guest. I don't care what your problem is with him, you can't." The male vampire moved faster than she could see, and suddenly he was in front of her. His hand closed around the bat and snapped it like a twig. His other hand grabbed her throat, lifting her off her feet effortlessly. Foolish child, he hissed, and she could see his fangs extending. I could drain you before your heart takes another beat. What makes you think you can stand against me? Dana clawed at his hand, unable to breathe, black spots dancing in her vision. This was it. She'd tried to help someone, and now she was going to die in a motel parking lot at 23 years old, and her mother would never know what happened to her. The vampire suddenly screamed and dropped her. Dana hit the ground hard, gasping for air, and looked up to see Driven standing between her and her attacker. Despite his injuries, he stood tall and commanding, and the fury in his face was terrifying. You dare harm someone under my protection? Driven's voice was thunder, deeper and more resonant than before. You dare attack an innocent who gave me sanctuary? She's just a human, Natasha said, but she'd taken several steps back. A mortal who she is mine. The words cracked like a whip. By the old laws, she offered me hospitality in my hour of need. That makes her sacred. And you, Vladimir, laid hands on her in violence. For that, you have forfeited your life. Driven moved. Dana barely saw it, but suddenly Vladimir was on the ground with Driven's hand around his throat. The king was terrifying in his rage, all trace of the gentle, pained man from earlier gone. This was a predator, an apex killer, something that had hunted and ruled for centuries. Please, Vladimir choked out. Mercy, my king, I didn't know, I didn't realize she was claimed. Ignorance is no excuse. Driven's hand tightened. You were sent to kill me, I understand that. War has its necessities, but involving a mortal threatening someone innocent, that is inexcusable. Tell Casimir that the Eastern Court does not forget. Tell him that I am coming for him, and his death will be slow. He released Vladimir, who scrambled backward. Natasha was already running, her form blurring with speed. Vladimir followed, and within seconds they were gone, disappeared into the night. Driven turned to Dana, and the fury drained from his face, replaced by concern. He knelt beside her, his hands gentle as they checked her throat where Vladimir had grabbed her. Are you hurt? He asked, and his voice was shaking. Dana, speak to me. Are you injured? I'm okay, she rasped. Her throat ached and would definitely bruise, but she could breathe. Just scared. That was you were. I'm sorry you had to see that. Driven helped her to her feet, supporting her when her legs wobbled. I am not always a civilized creature. When something threatens what is mine, the monster emerges. What's yours? Dana repeated, her mind catching on that phrase. What did you mean when you said I was yours? Driven looked uncomfortable, an expression she wouldn't have thought possible on his regal face. The old laws regarding hospitality are very specific. When a vampire accepts sanctuary in a time of need, they become bound to protect their host. You are under my protection now, whether you will it or not. I claimed you before them, made it known that harming you would be an act of war against me personally. Oh, Dana wasn't sure how to feel about that. So like vampire insurance? Despite everything, Driven smiled. Something like that. But it goes deeper than simple protection. You risked yourself for me. You stood against trained killers with nothing but a wooden bat and courage. Such loyalty deserves to be rewarded and safeguarded. They stood very close together, his hand still steadying her. Dana found herself looking up into those wine-dark eyes and feeling that same electric connection from earlier, stronger now. Like something fundamental had shifted between them. We should go inside, Driven said quietly. More may come, and I would have you safe inside. Where the room? Dana glanced at the lobby. I need to be at the desk. My job, bring your work to my room. The desk can be unattended for one night. When she started to protest, he continued, Please, Dana, I cannot protect you if you're alone in that lobby. And after what just happened, Casimir will know you helped me. That makes you a target. He was right, and Dana knew it. Vladimir and Natasha had seen her defend Driven, had heard him claim her. Even if she wanted to pretend none of this was happening, it was too late. She was involved now. Okay, she said. Let me grab my laptop and phone. I can forward the desk line to my cell if anyone calls. They went to the lobby together, Driven staying close like he expected another attack at any moment. Dana packed up quickly, taking only what she absolutely needed. The motel had never been robbed in the 3 years she'd worked here. She doubted tonight would be the exception. Room 12 felt different when they returned to it. More intimate, maybe, now that Dana knew she'd be staying. Driven locked the door and checked the windows while she set up her laptop on the small desk. The absurdity of doing her bookkeeping while a vampire king stood guard wasn't lost on her. You should rest, she told him, noticing how he favored his injured side. Those wounds aren't going to heal if you keep pushing yourself. Vampires heal faster than humans, Driven said, but he sat on the bed, exhaustion evident in the lines of his face. By tomorrow night I'll be nearly recovered. That's insane. Dana abandoned her laptop and came over to check his bandages. Some of them had bled through during the fight. You're going to pull your stitches, except you don't have stitches because you wouldn't let me take you to a hospital. Hold still. She changed the bandages that needed it. noting with surprise that some of the wounds did look better. Not healed, but improved beyond what should be possible in just a few hours. Vampire physiology apparently was no joke. You're very calm about all this, Dreven observed, watching her work. Most humans would be hysterical by now. Vampires, assassination attempts, threats in parking lots. I think I'm in shock, Dana admitted. Like, my brain knows I should be freaking out, but my body hasn't caught up yet. Ask me again tomorrow when this all feels real. Fair enough. He caught her hand as she finished with the last bandage. Thank you. Again, you've saved my life twice in one night now. You saved mine too, Dana pointed out. Vladimir was going to kill me. Or worse, he would have drained you, Dreven said quietly. Fed until your heart stopped. It's a terrible death, and I would have destroyed the entire northern court for allowing it to happen. The intensity in his voice made Dana shiver. You really meant that, about me being yours? Yes. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the touch gentle despite his strength. It surprised me as well. I haven't claimed anyone in decades. But when I saw him hurt you, something in me simply decided. You were mine to protect, mine to keep safe. And I would burn the world to do so. That's kind of intense for someone you just met, Dana said. But she didn't pull her hand away. Is it a vampire thing? Like some instinct? Partially. We're territorial creatures by nature. But this is more than that. Dreven met her eyes. And she saw vulnerability there. I've lived 800 years, Dana Frost. I've known thousands of people, human and vampire alike. But when you looked at me tonight, injured and vulnerable and claiming to be something impossible, you didn't see a monster. You saw someone who needed help and you gave it without hesitation. That kind of goodness is rare, worth protecting, worth claiming. Dana's heart was beating fast and not from fear. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything. Dreven released her hand, giving her space. Rest if you can. We're safe for now, but tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Casimir won't stop coming for me, and now you're entangled in this war. Great, Dana muttered, but she was too tired to really panic about it. She moved to the chair by the desk, intending to keep working, but Dreven made a disapproving sound. The bed is large enough for two, and you've been awake for well over a day. Sleep properly. I can't just, we barely know each other, and you're hurt. And Dana floundered for a reasonable objection. I am a gentleman, despite evidence to the contrary. You'll be perfectly safe. Dreven moved to one side of the bed, lying on top of the covers. Please. You've cared for me all night. Let me offer what comfort I can in return. Dana hesitated, but exhaustion was catching up with her. The bed did look incredibly inviting, and the chair was about as comfortable as sitting on concrete. With a sigh, she kicked off her shoes and climbed onto the other side of the bed, staying on top of the covers like he was. Just for an hour, she said. Then I need to check the desk. Of course, Dreven agreed, but his tone suggested he knew she'd sleep longer than that. Dana closed her eyes, hyper-aware of the vampire king lying less than 2 feet away. His presence was strange, cold in temperature but warm in a way she couldn't explain. Safe. Despite everything, she felt safe with him. Dreven, she whispered, unsure if he was already asleep. Yes? What happens now after you heal? Silence for a moment. Then I return to my court, gather my forces, prepare for the war that's coming. Casimir has made his move, and now I must respond. It will be bloody and brutal, and many will die before it's finished. And what about me? Dana asked the question that had been lurking in the back of her mind. You said I'm a target now. Does that mean I have to hide? Change my identity? Leave my life behind? I will protect you, Dreven said firmly. However, that must be accomplished. If you wish to remain in your human life, I'll station guards to watch over you. If you'd prefer to come with me, to stay where I can personally ensure your safety, my home is open to you. The choice is yours. Dana thought about her life, the failing motel, the medical bills, the exhaustion of working herself to death for barely enough to survive. Then she thought about the way Dreven had looked at her, the intensity of his protection, the electric feeling of his touch. What did she really have to lose? I'll think about it, she said quietly, and felt his hand find hers in the darkness between them. That's all I ask. Dreven said. Dana fell asleep holding the hand of a vampire king, and for the first time in months she didn't dream of bills and stress and her mother's illness. She dreamed of castles hidden beneath cities, of ballrooms lit by candlelight, of a man with white hair and ancient eyes, who looked at her like she was precious. She woke to late afternoon sun filtering through the curtains and the sound of her phone ringing. For a moment she was disoriented, not recognizing the room, then everything came rushing back. Dreven, vampires, assassination attempts. She grabbed her phone, seeing her manager's number. Hello, Dana? Where the hell are you? You were supposed to be at the desk this morning for checkout. Dana looked at the time. 2 in the afternoon. She'd slept for hours, missing her shift end completely. I'm so sorry. I had an emergency with one of the guests and I fell asleep. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, no thanks to you. Look, I know you've been pulling double shifts, but you can't just abandon the desk. This is your second warning. One more and I'll have to let you go. I understand, it won't happen again. Dana hung up feeling sick. She couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how much she hated it. Movement from the bed reminded her she wasn't alone. Dreven was sitting up, and even in the dim room she could see how much better he looked. The deathly pallor was gone, replaced by his normal ghostly complexion. He moved without pain, the supernatural healing having done its work overnight. Your employment is in jeopardy, he observed. Because you cared for me. It's fine. I just can't do it again. Dana rubbed her eyes, trying to wake up fully. How are you feeling? You look better, nearly healed. Dreven stood and stretched, his borrowed clothes pulling tight across his shoulders. I'll be at full strength by nightfall, which is fortunate because I need to leave soon. My court will be in chaos without me, and Casimir may strike at my people while I'm weakened. Something heavy settled in Dana's chest at those words. Of course he was leaving. He was a king with a kingdom to protect. She was just the motel clerk who'd happened to be on duty when he stumbled in. Their worlds had intersected for one strange night, but now they would separate again. Right, she said, forcing brightness into her voice. You should get back. Do you need me to call you a car? Your credit card is still on file, so I can charge it to the room. Dreven moved closer, his expression unreadable. Is that what you want, for me to leave and never return? It's not about what I want, Dana said. You have responsibilities, a war to fight. I'm just what? Just the woman who saved my life? Just the most intriguing person I've met in decades? Just the human I can't stop thinking about despite having known you for less than a day? Dreven's voice was intense. His eyes locked on hers. Dana Frost, I am offering you a choice. Come with me. See my world. Let me show you what I can give you in return for the sanctuary you provided. I have a life here, Dana protested weakly. My mom, my job, my apartment. A job that doesn't appreciate you. An apartment you can barely afford. And a mother who deserves better care than you can provide on a motel clerk's salary. Dreven wasn't being cruel, just honest. I've lived a long time. I've seen humans trap themselves in situations they hate because they're afraid of change. Don't be one of them. And what would I be instead, your pet human? Some kind of royal mascot? Dana felt defensive, scared of the hope rising in her chest. My guest, my companion. My Dreven paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I don't know what we could be to each other, but I want the chance to find out, don't you? Dana thought about the connection between them, that electric feeling every time they touched. She thought about how safe she'd felt sleeping beside him, how his protection had been absolute and unquestioning, and she thought about her life, the monotony, the exhaustion, the slow drowning in debt and despair. I can't just abandon my mother, she said. She depends on me. Bring her. Dreven said it like it was simple. My resources are considerable. I can provide care for her that human medicine cannot match. Private facilities, experimental treatments, the best doctors money can buy. And if you're with me, you'll be able to visit her whenever you wish. Why? Dana asked. Why do all this for someone you barely know? Dreven reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Because in 800 years no one has ever stood between me and death armed with nothing but a baseball bat and courage. Because you looked at me and saw a person, not a monster. Because when I hold your hand, I feel something I thought I'd lost centuries ago, hope. Is that enough reason? Dana leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. This is crazy. I don't know anything about your world. I don't know how to act around vampire nobility. I'll embarrass you. Impossible. Dreven leaned down until their foreheads touched. Say yes, Dana. Take a chance on something impossible. Let me show you magic. Yes, Dana whispered, and felt his smile against her temple. Good. Then we leave tonight as soon as the sun sets. Dreven pulled back, already shifting into planning mode. I'll arrange transportation. We'll stop by your home first so you can pack essentials and speak with your mother. Then we'll travel to my estate in the city. You have an estate? In what city? Dana realized how little she actually knew about him. This city, actually. About 50 miles north. The Eastern Court's American holdings are centered there, though my primary residence is in Prague. Dreven looked almost embarrassed. I know this is happening very fast. If you need more time, no. Dana surprised herself by saying. If I think about it too much, I'll talk myself out of it. Let's just go before my common sense catches up. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Dana called her manager and quit, which felt both terrifying and liberating. She'd never quit a job without having another one lined up, but Dreven assured her that money would not be an issue. She tried not to think too hard about what that meant. As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and purple, a sleek black car pulled into the motel parking lot. The driver who emerged was pale and elegant, another vampire. He bowed deeply to Dreven. My king, we've been searching for you frantically. When Mikhail and Elena didn't report, and his voice broke, we feared the worst. Mikhail and Elena died with honor, protecting their king. Their sacrifice will be remembered. Driven's voice was formal but genuinely sad. Alexander, this is Dana Frost. She is under my personal protection and will be returning to the estate with us. Her safety is your priority, understood? Alexander's eyes widened slightly, but he bowed to Dana as well. Of course, my king. It's an honor to meet you, Miss Frost. Just Dana is fine, she said awkwardly. Nice to meet you too. The drive to Dana's apartment was surreal. She sat in the back of the luxury car with Driven while Alexander drove, trying to process that this was actually happening. She was leaving her life behind to go with a vampire king she'd met less than 24 hours ago. This was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. Her apartment looked even more depressing than usual when they arrived. The building was old and poorly maintained, with cracked linoleum and flickering hallway lights. She led Driven and Alexander up 3 flights of stairs to her tiny one-bedroom unit. Wait here, she told them. Let me talk to my mom first. This is going to be a lot for her. But when Dana opened the door, her heart sank. Her mother wasn't in her usual spot on the couch. The apartment was dark and quiet. Mom? Dana called, flipping on lights. Mom, where are you? She found her mother in the bedroom, lying in bed with a fever flush on her cheeks. The cancer had been in remission, but Dana knew that could change. Seeing her mother like this, fragile and sick, made her decision feel even more right. Dana, her mother's voice was weak. Is that you, honey? I'm here, Mom. Dana sat on the edge of the bed and took her mother's hand. How are you feeling? Should I call the doctor? Just tired. The treatment takes it out of me. Her mother squeezed Dana's hand. You look different. Did something happen? Something incredible? Dana took a deep breath. Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound insane. But I need you to trust me. She explained everything: the injured stranger, the vampires, Driven's offer. She expected disbelief, expected her mother to think she'd lost her mind. Instead, her mother smiled. A vampire king, she said. Well, that's certainly more exciting than the motel. What's he like? He's intense, protective, kind of old-fashioned, but in a charming way. Dana felt herself blushing. Mom, he says he can help you. Get you better care. Treatments we can't afford. He wants you to come with us. Oh, honey, I can't impose on your vampire suitor like that. But her mother's eyes were hopeful. Can I? Please. Dana felt tears threatening. Let me do this for you. Let me actually help instead of just watching you suffer. The door opened and Driven stepped in, ducking slightly to fit through the frame. He approached the bed with careful dignity and bowed to Dana's mother. Mrs. Frost, I am Driven Nachtmarin. Your daughter saved my life, and I am forever in her debt. It would honor me to extend my protection and resources to your family. Dana's mother stared at him, then started laughing. Oh my, Dana wasn't exaggerating. You really are a vampire. Look at you, all pale and regal. Like something out of a romance novel. Mom! Dana was mortified, but Driven looked amused. I am aware the situation is unusual, he said. But I assure you, my intentions toward your daughter are entirely honorable. She will be safe and cared for under my protection. Well, she certainly won't be bored. Dana's mother tried to sit up and Driven immediately moved to help her, his strength making the movement effortless. Thank you. It's been a while since I could do that on my own. We have excellent doctors in our employ, Driven told her. If you consent to come with us, I'll have you examined immediately. No promises, but our medical knowledge exceeds what humans typically have access to. We've had centuries to study the body and its ailments. You're offering me hope, Dana's mother said softly. How can I say no to that? Within an hour, they'd packed up the essentials from the apartment. It wasn't much, a few boxes of clothes and personal items. Looking around at the place she'd called home for 3 years, Dana felt nothing but relief to be leaving it behind. Alexander arranged for a medical transport to take Dana's mother to the estate separately, complete with a nurse, a vampire nurse apparently, who specialized in human medicine. It was surreal watching her mother being settled into the comfortable medical van, but she looked happier than Dana had seen her in months. We'll see you there, Dana promised, hugging her mother carefully. Everything's going to be better now. I know it will be. Her mother looked past Dana to where Driven waited by the car. He's a good one, honey. I can tell. Old-fashioned manners, respectful in the way he looks at you. That's not something you find every day. Mom, Dana protested, but her mother just patted her cheek. I may be sick, but I'm not blind. Go on, start your adventure. The drive to Driven's estate took about an hour, heading north into the wealthier suburbs. They turned off the main road onto a private drive that wound through dense forest. When the trees finally cleared, Dana gasped. The estate was a mansion, but not the ostentatious kind. It was elegant and old, built in a European style with stone walls and peaked roofs. Lights glowed in the windows, warm and inviting despite the building's obvious age. It looked like something that had been transplanted directly from Eastern Europe, which it probably had been. This is your American home? Dana asked faintly. This is how many rooms does this place have? 47, Dreven said, though many are unused. I don't entertain much when I'm here. This is more of a working residence. 47 rooms was a working residence. Dana tried to wrap her mind around the scale of wealth she was dealing with. The motel where she'd worked had 12 rooms and was considered adequately sized. Staff met them at the door, all vampires, all moving with that same supernatural grace. They bowed to Dreven and regarded Dana with curiosity but no hostility. One, an elegant woman who introduced herself as Marguerite, took charge of showing Dana to her room. The king has given you the Rose Suite, Marguerite explained, leading Dana up a sweeping staircase. It's one of our finest guest accommodations. Your mother will be in the adjacent room once she's settled from the medical evaluation. The Rose Suite was larger than Dana's entire apartment had been. The bed was a four-poster with curtains. The furniture was all antique and probably priceless, and French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking gardens that glowed with hidden lights. There are clothes in the wardrobe, Marguerite said. We took the liberty of estimating your size. If anything doesn't fit, we'll have it corrected immediately. The king requests your presence for dinner at 8 if you're amenable. Dinner? Dana checked the time. It was nearly 7:30. What do vampires eat at dinner? Marguerite smiled. The king keeps a fully staffed human kitchen for guests and the handful of human employees we maintain. You'll find the food quite excellent. Dress is formal, but not excessively so. I'd suggest the blue dress, it will suit you. After Marguerite left, Dana explored her new room in a daze. The bathroom was marble and gold, with a bathtub large enough to swim in. The closet held dozens of dresses, all in her size or close to it. She selected the blue one. Marguerite had mentioned, a simple but elegant gown in deep sapphire silk. She showered and changed, taking more time with her appearance than she had in months. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, elegant without being too formal. Her hair, freshly washed, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked like she belonged in a place like this. A knock at the door startled her. Miss Dana, the king is ready for you. Alexander led her through the mansion to a small private dining room. It was intimate compared to the grand spaces she'd glimpsed, with a table set for two. Candles provided most of the light, giving everything a warm glow. Dreven stood when she entered, and Dana's breath caught. He'd changed as well, wearing all black that made his pale skin and white hair even more striking. He looked every inch the king. He was powerful, elegant, and impossibly attractive. You're breathtaking, he said, moving to pull out her chair. The dress suits you perfectly. Thank you. For the dress, I mean, and for all of this. Dana gestured vaguely at the room, the mansion, everything. It's overwhelming. I imagine it is. Dreven sat across from her as human staff. She noticed, brought out the first course. I've arranged for your mother to be examined by my personal physician. Dr. Chen is the best in his field, and he's worked with our people for 30 years. If anyone can help her, he can. I don't know how to thank you, Dana said quietly. This is more than I ever expected, more than I deserve. You deserve far more than I can give. Dreven's expression was intense. But I'll spend as long as you'll allow me trying to provide it. Dinner was delicious, better than any restaurant Dana had ever been to. They talked as they ate, Dreven telling her about his court, the politics between the 5 vampire kingdoms, the history that stretched back millennia. Dana shared stories about her life, her dreams before financial reality crushed them, her mother's illness. You wanted to be a teacher, Dreven said. Why didn't you finish your degree? Money. When Mom got sick, I had to drop out to work full-time. The medical bills were crushing us, and student loans on top of that. It was impossible. Dana pushed food around her plate. I told myself I'd go back someday, but that someday kept getting further away. You could return now, Dreven said. The university in the city has an excellent education program. You could finish your degree, just like that, while living here? Dana shook her head. Dreven, I can't let you pay for everything. It's too much. Why? He seemed genuinely confused. I have resources beyond measure. What good are they if I can't use them to help someone I care about? Someone you care about, Dana repeated. We met yesterday. Yes. And in that time you've proven yourself braver, kinder, and more genuine than people I've known for centuries. Dreven reached across the table and took her hand. I don't pretend to understand it fully myself, but there's something between us, Dana. You feel it too, don't you? She did. That electric connection, the sense that something fundamental had shifted when they met. It was crazy and impossible and completely real. I feel it, she admitted, but I'm scared. What if this is just gratitude? What if once things settle down, you realize I'm just a normal human with nothing special about me? Then I would be fortunate to have a normal human who looks at me like I'm a person rather than a king. Dreven's thumb traced circles on her palm. Dana, I'm not asking you to declare eternal love. I'm asking for time. Let me court you properly. Let us discover what we could be to each other. Court me. Dana couldn't help but smile. You really are old-fashioned, 800 years old, he reminded her. I still remember when courting meant poetry and supervised walks in gardens, though I'm willing to adapt to modern customs if you prefer. I kind of like the old-fashioned approach, Dana admitted. It's romantic. They finished dinner and Dreven took her on a tour of the estate. The mansion was even more impressive than she'd realized, with libraries full of ancient books, art galleries with paintings centuries old, and a ballroom that could hold hundreds. We host the seasonal courts here, Dreven explained. 4 times a year, the vampires of the Eastern Court's American territory gather for formal assemblies. Politics, grievances, celebrations. It's tradition, and I'm supposed to be at these things? Dana felt panic rising. I don't know how to navigate vampire politics. I'll say something wrong and start an international incident. You'll have me beside you, Dreven said firmly, and I'll teach you everything you need to know. Besides, most of court politics is simply being polite and not taking sides in disputes. You'll be fine. They ended up in the gardens, walking among roses that bloomed despite the late season. The night was cool and clear, stars visible overhead. Dreven offered Dana his coat when she shivered, wrapping it around her shoulders. This is like a fairy tale, Dana said softly. The kind where the ordinary girl gets swept away to a magical kingdom. Except it's real. Fairy tales usually gloss over the dangerous parts, Dreven said. I wish I could promise you complete safety, but I can't. Casimir's attempt on my life was the opening move in a larger conflict. There will be more violence before this ends. And you, as someone under my protection, may become a target. I know. Dana had been trying not to think about that part. Vladimir and Natasha saw me. They know I helped you, which is why I'm assigning permanent guards to you. Alexander and 3 others, all warriors I trust with my life. They'll accompany you everywhere outside the estate until Casimir is dealt with. That sounds ominous. Dealt with how? Dana asked. Dreven's expression went cold. He attacked me directly, killed 2 of my oldest friends, and threatened someone under my protection. By the old laws, that gives me the right to challenge him to single combat. If he refuses, I have grounds to declare war on the Northern Court. Single combat? Like a duel? Dana stopped walking, turning to face him. That's insane. What if he kills you? He won't. Dreven cupped her face, his touch gentle. I've survived 800 years, Dana. Casimir is powerful, but he's young and reckless. I've fought and won battles he can't imagine. But you're not invincible. He hurt you before. Dana's hands came up to grip his wrists. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks. I promise, Dreven said softly. I have something to live for now. Someone waiting for me to return. That's a powerful motivation to survive. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. Dana didn't. She met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deeper. His mouth was cold against hers, but the passion was warm, real, making her dizzy with its intensity. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dreven rested his forehead against hers. I've waited so long for this, he whispered. For you, I didn't even know I was waiting until you appeared. I'm scared, Dana admitted, of how fast this is happening, of how much I already feel for you. So am I. Dreven's honesty surprised her. I've loved before, centuries ago. I've had consorts and companions. But this, what I feel when I look at you, it's different. Stronger, like something ancient recognizing its match. They stood in the garden holding each other as the night deepened around them. Dana felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump into unknown waters. But with Dreven's arms around her, she thought maybe the fall wouldn't be so frightening. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Dana spent mornings with her mother, who was responding well to Dr. Chen's treatments. The vampire physician had access to medicines and techniques that weren't available to normal doctors, and already her mother's color was better, her energy returning. Afternoons were for learning. Dreven had assigned Marguerite to teach Dana the intricacies of vampire culture, the formal greetings, the hierarchy of courts, the old laws that governed their society. It was like learning a foreign language, but Dana found it fascinating. Evenings belonged to Dreven. They had dinner together every night, walked in the gardens, talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told her stories of his long life, the wars he'd fought, the changes he'd witnessed, the loneliness of immortality. She shared her dreams, her fears, the small details of a mortal life that he found endlessly interesting. And they kissed, often, passionately. Dreven was careful never to push for more, but the desire between them was obvious. Dana had never wanted anyone the way she wanted him, this dangerous, powerful creature who looked at her like she was his entire world. On the 4th night, everything changed. Dana woke from a deep sleep to the sound of breaking glass. She sat up in the darkness, heart pounding, trying to figure out what had woken her. The French doors to her balcony were open, curtains billowing in the wind. She knew she'd locked those. "Hello, little human," a voice purred from the darkness. A figure stepped into the moonlight, a vampire she didn't recognize, with pale hair and eyes that glowed red. "I've come to collect you. Casimir wants to meet the mortal who's caught our king's attention." Dana opened her mouth to scream, but the vampire moved faster than sight. His hand clamped over her mouth, his other arm wrapping around her waist and lifting her effortlessly. "None of that," he said. "Come quietly and I won't have to hurt you. Resist and well, let's just say Casimir didn't specify what condition you needed to be in." He carried her toward the balcony and Dana struggled frantically. This couldn't be happening. There were supposed to be guards, protections. How had he gotten in? Suddenly the vampire holding her screamed and dropped her. Dana hit the floor hard and looked up to see Dreven standing in the doorway. His face was a mask of pure rage, his eyes glowing with inner fire. He looked terrifying, an ancient predator unleashed. "You dare enter my home?" Dreven's voice was thunder. "You dare touch what is mine?" The intruder tried to run, but Dreven was faster. He caught the vampire by the throat and slammed him against the wall with such force that the plaster cracked. "Please," the vampire choked. "I was just following orders." Casimir said. "I don't care what Casimir said." Dreven's hand tightened. "You violated every law of hospitality. You threatened an innocent under my personal protection. For that, there is only one punishment." What happened next was brutal and quick. Dana looked away, but she couldn't block out the sounds. When it was over and Dreven came to her, his hands were stained with blood. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, checking her over with shaking hands. "Did he harm you?" "I'm okay. Scared, but okay." Dana was trembling, adrenaline making her dizzy. "How did he get in?" "You said there were protections." "There are, which means someone inside betrayed us." Dreven's expression was grim. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. His heart didn't beat, she realized distantly, but his embrace was solid and real. "I'm sorry, this is my fault. I should have kept you safer." "It's not your fault," Dana said into his shirt. "It's Casimir's. He's the one who sent assassins, and he'll pay for it." Dreven pulled back enough to look at her face. "I'm done waiting. Tomorrow I'll send formal challenge to Casimir. This ends now." "The single combat thing?" Dana's hands tightened in his shirt. "Dreven, no. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than letting him keep sending assassins into my home, targeting you." Dreven shook his head. "No, this is the only way. I'll face him, defeat him, and end this threat permanently." They spent the rest of the night together, neither willing to let the other go. Dreven held Dana on the couch in her sitting room, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped protectively around her. He told her stories of past battles he'd won, trying to reassure her. She listened and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Morning came too quickly. Dreven had to leave her as the sun rose, retreating to his protected chambers deeper in the mansion. Dana tried to sleep but couldn't, too anxious about what was coming. By evening, the challenge had been sent. Marguerite explained that challenges between kings followed ancient protocols. The combat would take place in neutral territory, witnessed by representatives from all 5 courts. It would be to the death or surrender, with the loser forfeiting their throne and territory. When, Dana asked. 3 nights from now, at the old amphitheater downtown. Marguerite's expression was sympathetic. "I know you're worried, but the king is a formidable fighter. He's survived 800 years and countless battles. He won't fall to someone like Casimir." Dana wanted to believe that. She spent the next 3 days in a fog of anxiety, barely eating, hardly sleeping. Her mother tried to comfort her, but even she could see that Dana was terrified of losing Dreven before they'd really had a chance to begin. On the night of the challenge, Dana was dressed in formal vampire court attire, a gown of deep burgundy with gold accents. She felt like she was going to a funeral. Dreven came to collect her personally, looking magnificent in black armor that seemed to be made of metal but moved like cloth. "You don't have to come," he said gently. "You could stay here, safe. I'd understand." "I'm coming," Dana said firmly. "If you're going to fight for me, the least I can do is be there to watch." The old amphitheater was underground, hidden beneath a derelict building downtown. It was Roman in style, with stone seating rising in tiers around a central arena. Vampires filled the seats, hundreds of them, representing all 5 courts. Dana sat in the section reserved for the Eastern Court, with Alexander and other guards surrounding her. Casimir was already in the arena when they arrived. He was tall and powerfully built, with the same pale skin and white hair as all vampires. But where Dreven's face was refined and noble, Casimir's was cruel. He looked at Dana with obvious interest, his smile predatory. "So this is the mortal," he called out. "I can see the appeal, Dreven. Shall we make this interesting? If I win, I take your throne, your territory, and your little pet." "When I win," Dreven corrected coldly. "You'll be dead, so your opinions on the spoils won't matter." A vampire Dana didn't recognize stepped into the center of the arena, the arbiter, apparently, who would ensure fair combat. He recited the rules in a language Dana didn't understand, then switched to English. Combat continues until death or surrender. No weapons, no assistance, no interference from either court. Are both parties ready? Ready, Casimir said, already moving into a fighting stance. Ready, Dreven confirmed. He looked up at Dana, their eyes meeting across the distance. She tried to send every ounce of belief and support through that gaze. Then begin. The two vampire kings collided in the center of the arena with a sound like thunder. They moved faster than Dana could follow, becoming blurs of motion. When they separated, both had drawn blood. Casimir's lip was split, Dreven's cheek torn. They fought with a brutality that was hard to watch. These weren't normal combat moves, they used their supernatural strength and speed to devastating effect. Casimir would slam Dreven into the ground hard enough to crack stone. Dreven would respond with strikes that sent Casimir flying into the arena walls. Minutes passed like hours. Dana's hands were clenched so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. Around her, the vampire audience watched in silence, evaluating every move. Dreven was faster, his centuries of experience showing in how he anticipated in Casimir's attacks. But Casimir was stronger, his youth translating to raw power. It seemed evenly matched, neither gaining a clear advantage. Then Casimir made a mistake. He overextended on an attack, leaving his side exposed for just a moment. Dreven took advantage instantly, his hand driving into Casimir's chest. Not deep enough for the heart, but enough to cause serious damage. Casimir screamed and stumbled back, blood pouring from the wound. Dreven pressed his advantage, moving with lethal grace. He caught Casimir by the throat, lifting him off his feet. Yield, Dreven commanded. Or die, choose now. Never. Casimir spat blood in Dreven's face. I'll see your court destroyed before He didn't finish the sentence. Dreven's hand drove into his chest again, this time true. He pulled out Casimir's heart, the organ still beating weakly in his palm. Casimir's eyes went wide with shock, then empty. Dreven dropped both the heart and the body, letting Casimir's corpse hit the ground. The amphitheater erupted in noise, some cheering, some protesting, all reacting to the dramatic end. The arbiter raised Dreven's arm in victory. Dreven Nachtmaren is victorious. The northern court is forfeit to the eastern court by right of conquest. Donna didn't remember running down to the arena floor. She just found herself there suddenly, throwing herself into Dreven's arms despite the blood covering him. He caught her, holding her tight, and she felt his body shaking. It's over, he said into her hair. You're safe. It's finally over. I was so scared, Dana admitted. I thought I might lose you. Never. Dreven pulled back to look at her face. I had too much to live for. Too much to fight for. They kissed there in the arena, surrounded by hundreds of watching vampires, and Dana didn't care. Let them see. Let them all know that their king had found someone worth fighting for. The aftermath of the challenge was complicated. Dreven had to deal with the political fallout of absorbing the northern court into his own territory. There were treaties to negotiate, territories to divide, and Casimir's former subjects to integrate. It took weeks of constant work, with Dreven spending long hours in meetings and consultations. But he always made time for Dana. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. She continued her education, working toward finishing her degree through a combination of online classes and on-campus attendance. Her mother's health improved dramatically under Dr. Chen's care until she was stronger than she'd been in years, and Dana and Dreven grew closer. Their relationship deepened from attraction into something more profound. He courted her properly, with romantic dinners and thoughtful gifts and long conversations that lasted until dawn. She learned to navigate vampire society, finding her place in the court as Dreven's chosen companion. 3 months after the challenge, Dreven took Dana to Prague to see his primary residence, an actual castle that had been in his family for 6 centuries. It was magnificent, towering over the city with spires that seemed to touch the clouds. He showed her his private quarters, his libraries, the throne room where he held court. This is my world, he said, standing with her on a balcony overlooking the city lights. Everything I am, everything I've built across 800 years, and I would trade it all for one more day with you. You're not getting rid of me that easily, Dana said, leaning into his embrace. I'm in this for the long haul. The long haul, Dreven repeated thoughtfully. Dana, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering. He turned her to face him, his expression serious. I'm immortal. I'll live for thousands of years more, barring accident or violence. But you're human. You'll age, grow old, eventually die. I'll have decades with you if I'm lucky, then centuries of existence without you. And I don't know if I can bear that. What are you saying? Dana's heart was pounding. I'm saying there's a way for us to have more time. Much more. Dreven's hands framed her face gently. I could turn you, make you vampire. It's not something I offer lightly. The transformation is painful, and there's no going back once it's done. But you'd be immortal. We'd have eternity together. Dana stared at him, mind racing. become a vampire, live forever. Never age, never die, never be separated from Driven by time. It sounded like a fantasy. What about my mother, she asked. I can't leave her, and I can't ask her to become vampire too. She's been through enough. Your mother could live out her natural life in comfort and happiness, with you able to visit her whenever you wish. And after, Driven paused. After, you'd still have me and a family in the court. You wouldn't be alone. This is huge, Dana said. I need to think about it. I know. Take all the time you need. Driven kissed her forehead. I'll love you regardless of your choice. Mortal or immortal, you're mine for as long as we have. Dana thought about it for weeks. She talked to her mother, who surprisingly encouraged her to accept. Honey, you found something special, her mother said. Love that transcends normal boundaries. Don't give that up because you're worried about me. I've lived a full life and I'm at peace with how it ends. But you have a chance at something extraordinary. Take it. She talked to Marguerite, who explained what the transformation would entail. 3 days of excruciating pain as her body died and was reborn. The burning hunger for blood that would consume her for weeks afterward. The loss of sunlight, of normal food, of her humanity in many ways. But she'd gained so much more: strength, speed, near immortality. And Driven for as long as they both existed. In the end, the choice was simple. Dana had been given a second chance at life when she met Driven. She wasn't going to waste it worrying about what she'd lose. She'd focus on everything she'd gain. On a cold December night, 6 months after that first meeting in the motel, Dana stood in Driven's chambers and made her choice. I want this, she said firmly. I want eternity with you. Turn me. Driven's expression was a mix of joy and sorrow. It will hurt. I wish I could spare you that pain. I trust you. Dana moved into his arms, tilting her head to expose her throat. I've always trusted you from that first night. I'm not stopping now. Driven kissed her deeply, pouring centuries of longing into it. Then his lips moved to her throat and she felt his fangs pierce her skin. The sensation was strange, painful, but also intimate, like he was taking part of her into himself. He drank, and Dana felt her heartbeat slowing, her vision dimming. Just when she thought she might pass out, Driven pulled back. He bit his own wrist, opening a vein, and pressed it to her lips. Drink, he commanded. Take my blood, my strength. Become what I am. Dana drank, and his blood was cold fire in her mouth. It burned down her throat, spreading through her body like lightning. She could feel it changing her, rewriting her on a fundamental level. The pain started gradually, then built until it was all-consuming. Dana collapsed, and Driven caught her, lowering her gently to the bed. He held her through it, whispering encouragement, refusing to leave her side even as she screamed. 3 days. That's how long it took. 3 days of agony as her body died and transformed. But Driven was there for every moment, his presence the only thing that kept her sane. On the 4th day, Dana woke. The world looked different. Colors were brighter, sounds sharper, every sense enhanced beyond what she'd known. She could hear Driven's voice in the next room, could smell the leather of his books, could feel the texture of the silk sheets beneath her fingers with impossible clarity. And she was hungry. Desperately, consumingly hungry. Driven entered the room carrying a glass of something dark. Blood, she realized. Her fangs extended instinctively, and she felt ashamed of the desire flooding her. Don't fight it, Driven said gently, sitting beside her. This is what you are now, what we are. There's no shame in it. He helped her drink, teaching her control even as the hunger raged. The blood was incredible, rich and warm and satisfying in a way normal food had never been. She drank until the edge of hunger faded, then looked up at Driven with new eyes. I can see you more clearly now, she said in wonder. Every detail. You're even more beautiful than before, as are you. Driven traced her face with reverent fingers. You've always been beautiful to me, but now you're radiant, eternal mine, if you'll have me. Forever, Dana promised, and kissed him. The next months were a learning process. Dana had to learn to control her new strength, her speed, her hunger. She had to learn to move through a world that now saw her as predator rather than prey. But Driven was patient, teaching her everything she needed to know. Her mother lived another 2 years, happy and healthy until the end. Dana was there when she passed, holding her hand and grateful for every extra moment Dr. Chen's treatments had given them. It hurt to lose her, but Dana knew her mother had died content, knowing her daughter had found love and happiness. After that, Dana threw herself fully into her new life. She finished her degree and even taught part-time at the university, working with vampire students who needed education in human culture. She became an official part of Driven's court, his companion and partner in ruling, and they were happy. Truly, deeply happy in a way Dana had never imagined possible. Driven was everything she'd never known. She wanted protective but not controlling, passionate but gentle, powerful but never cruel. He treated her as an equal, respected her opinions, valued her counsel. 5 years after her transformation, on a snowy evening in Prague, Driven led Dana to the throne room. The entire court was assembled, hundreds of vampires in their formal best. "What's going on?" Dana asked nervously. "You didn't tell me there was a court session tonight." "There isn't," Dreven said, a slight smile on his lips. "This is something else entirely." He led her to the front of the room, then to her shock, dropped to one knee. The entire court went silent, vampires leaning forward to watch. "Dana Frost," Dreven said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "5 years ago you stumbled into my life when I was at my lowest. You offered me sanctuary when you had no reason to trust me. You stood between me and death armed with nothing but courage. You've challenged me, supported me, loved me despite knowing exactly what I am. You've made the last 5 years the happiest of my very long life." He pulled out a ring gold with a deep red stone that caught the light. "I've been a king for 800 years, but I've never had a queen. Someone to stand beside me, to rule with me, to share the weight of eternity. Dana, would you do me the incredible honor of becoming my wife, my partner, my queen?" Dana stared at him, tears streaming down her face. She'd imagined many futures when she first became vampire, but this was beyond her wildest dreams. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, of course, yes." The court erupted in applause as Dreven slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her. Dana threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at once. When they finally broke apart, she looked out at the assembled vampires, her people now, her court. "Thank you," she said to Dreven quietly, "for finding me, for saving me, for giving me this life." "I should thank you," Dreven replied. "You saved me first, remember? In every way a person can be saved." The wedding was held 3 months later, a blend of vampire tradition and human custom. Dana wore a gown of white and gold that made her look like a fairy tale princess. Dreven wore formal court attire, looking every inch the king he was. They were married in the castle's ancient chapel, before witnesses from all 5 vampire courts. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Dreven kissed Dana with a passion that made the entire assembly break into spontaneous celebration. The reception lasted 3 days, as was traditional for royal vampire weddings. There was music and dancing and toasts in languages Dana was still learning. But her favorite part was dancing with Dreven in the great hall, held close in his arms as they moved to a waltz that was old when the castle was young. "Any regrets?" Dreven asked softly. "About that night in the motel? About saying yes to all of this?" Dana looked around at the magnificent hall, the celebrating court, the life she'd built with this incredible man. She thought about the broke motel clerk she'd been exhausted, hopeless, drowning in poverty and despair. "Not a single one," she said honestly. "Best $45 I ever earned." Dreven laughed and spun her across the floor, and Dana felt joy so pure it was almost painful. She'd given a room to an injured stranger and found her destiny. She'd risked everything for someone she barely knew and been rewarded beyond measure. She was Dana Nachtmarin now, vampire queen of the Eastern Court. She had a husband who loved her desperately, a court that respected her, and literally forever to enjoy it all. The scared girl working double shifts at a failing motel seemed like someone from another lifetime. In a way, she was that girl had died so this woman could be reborn. And as Dreven dipped her dramatically, making her laugh and the court applaud, Dana knew without doubt that she'd made the right choice. All those months ago, giving the last room to a wounded stranger had seemed like a simple act of compassion. It had been the beginning of everything. Years turned to decades, then centuries. Dana and Dreven ruled the Eastern Court together, beloved by their people and feared by their enemies. They traveled the world, saw empires rise and fall, witnessed humanity evolve in ways both beautiful and terrible, and through it all they remained devoted to each other. Their love didn't fade. With time it grew stronger, deeper, more profound. They were partners in every sense, ruling together, fighting together, living together through all the long years of immortality. Sometimes, on quiet nights, they would return to that same motel where they'd first met. It was abandoned now, had been for over a century, but they'd bought the property and preserved it exactly as it had been. They'd walk into room 12, and Dana would remember the scared girl she'd been, tending to a stranger's wounds with shaking hands. "Thank you," Dreven would say on those visits, "for seeing me when I needed to be seen, for being brave when you had every reason to be afraid. Thank you for giving me the adventure I didn't know I needed," Dana would reply, "for showing me that magic was real." They'd stand in that old room, holding each other, grateful for the chance encounter that had changed everything. A broke motel clerk giving the last room to an injured stranger. Such a small act, such a simple kindness. But it had led to love that spanned centuries, to a partnership that would endure as long as they both existed, in a world of darkness and danger, of ancient feuds and immortal politics. They had found something rare and precious, a love that time could not diminish, that challenges could not break, that death itself could not end. They had found each other, and that was worth more than all the kingdoms and power and eternity combined. Dana Nachtmarin, former motel clerk and now vampire queen, had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the smallest acts of kindness. Sometimes the person who needs saving is really the one who saves you. And sometimes, giving a stranger the last room is the first step toward forever. She'd given sanctuary to a vampire king in his hour of need. He'd given her eternity in return. It was the best trade she'd ever made. And they lived happily, powerfully, passionately, for all the endless years to come.